Okay, so the goal of the first chapter of this course is to basically build an understanding of the set of reals R. Alright, so I will not be going into a full-fledged construction of the real line, but I hope to provide you enough background so that at least you can understand why we need to define the set of reals in order to do a study of analysis in the first place. For example, why is it not sufficient simply to work with the set of rationals? Why do we need to define the irrationals and therefore define the set of reals? Okay, so to begin this chapter, I'm going to start off by assuming that you already understand the set of rationals. Okay, so this set, which we denote by Q, is our notation for the set of rational numbers. And in particular, this set is obtained by using the operations of addition, subtraction, multiplication and division on the natural numbers, right? So this is obtained via operations of addition, subtraction, multiplication and division on the natural numbers, right? So this is something that I hope you understand, that once you take the counting numbers and you do addition, subtraction, multiplication, division between natural numbers, you will end up with the set of rational numbers, right? And one property that you might want to keep in mind about the rationals is that between any two rationals there is another rational, okay, which means that if P and Q belong to the set of rationals with P not equal to Q, then the average of P and Q, which in fact lies between P and Q, and it belongs to the rationals, right? So what this means is that on one hand, so between any two rationals there are rationals, okay? So in some sense rationals are quite well packed together, if you will, and yet as we will see, there are gaps in the rationals. Okay, so this is what I want to illustrate primarily in this first video, namely that for the purpose of studying analysis, working purely with the set of rationals, which can be constructed using elementary operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division on the natural numbers, is not sufficient. And the reason for its insufficiency is that there are gaps in the rationals, as I will illustrate in a couple of examples going forward. And these gaps, quote unquote, exist in the rationals irrespective of the fact that between any two rationals lies another rational, right? So in spite of the fact that there are rationals between every pair of rationals, there are, as we will see, gaps in the set of rationals which we need to fill in order to build a clean theory of limits, right? That is essentially what the construction of the reals entails. Okay, so what do I mean by saying that there are gaps in the rationals? I'm going to illustrate this by two examples which are in fact connected to one another. The first example is the following. My claim is that there does not exist a solution of the following equation: x square is equal to 2 in the set of rationals, right? So all of you of course know what the solution is or what the solutions are corresponding to this equation, but at this point what I'm trying to without having defined irrational numbers, I just want to point out that within the space of rational numbers there is no solution to the equation x square is equal to 2. Okay, So let us see, there's a very simple argument to show that this statement is true, right? So I'm going to prove this via contradiction. So suppose or assume that x is equal to m by n solves this equation, x square is equal to 2, where m, n are integers that are relatively prime. What does it mean to say that m and n are relatively prime? It means that they have no common factors, right? So I'm assuming that there is a rational solution to x square is equal to 2, and given I have a rational solution, I can always express that rational number as a ratio of two relatively prime integers, of course, by cancelling out all common factors that might arise between the numerator and the denominator. So suppose that such a solution exists. Okay, so what does this mean? What this means is that m square by n square, n is equal to 2, right? And what that in turn means that m square is equal to 2 times n square. Okay. Now let us see what this means. If m square is equal to 2 times n square, from this I conclude that m square is even, right? Because m square is 2 times some integer, so therefore m square must necessarily be even. But if m square is even, that means that m is even, right? Because the square of an odd number couldn't possibly be even, so that means m is even. That means that m square is divisible by 4, or rather is a multiple of 4. Now if m square is a multiple of 4, so is 2n square, right? Because m square is equal to 2n square, which means that 2n square is a multiple of 4. Which in turn implies that n square is a multiple of 2, that is that it is even, which in turn implies that n is even. And that gives us a contradiction, right? So if m by n, where m and n are relatively prime, are to satisfy the solution x square is equal to 2, then we first concluded that m must be even, and then we concluded that n must be even. But this is of course a contradiction, because we assumed that m and n are relatively prime, so they couldn't possibly both be even. So this is our contradiction. Right, and that completes the proof. Right, so what we have shown through a fairly elementary argument is that that there is no solution to the equation x square is equal to 2 within the set of rationals. So that gives you one, shall we say, hint about why there are gaps in the rationals, which we will subsequently fill in defining the real numbers. So let me now give you another very related example. So let's define these two sets. Again, you will see that the sets are in fact defined in a manner that links to the first example itself. Okay, so let's use the set A, which is the set of all positive rationals. So this is non-negative rationals, right? The set of rationals is denoted by Q. So Q plus, with the plus in the subscript, corresponds to non-negative rationals. Okay, so let A be the set of non-negative rationals such that x square is less than 2. Okay, so A, the way to read this is that A is the set of all non-negative rationals satisfying the property that the square of that number is less than 2, right? And B is the set of all non-negative rationals such that the square is more than 2. Okay, now note that we have already proved that there is no rational that satisfies the property that x square is equal to 2. right? So therefore A and B basically define a disjoint partition of the set of non-negative rationals, right? That I hope is clear, right? What we are going to show is the following. This is example 2. What I'm going to show is the following, that on one hand A has no largest element, and similarly we will show that B has no smallest element. Okay, so A is the set of all rationals whose square is less than 2, and yet we will see that again, because of the fact that A is restricted to rationals, we will see that A does not have any largest element. There is no such thing as a largest element of A. And similarly, we will show that B, which is a set of all rationals whose square is more than 2, does not have a smallest element, right? Which also again points to the fact that there is some gap here when I'm working exclusively with the rationals. Okay, so let's see how the proof goes. It's actually fairly straightforward. So the argument is as follows. So suppose that P is a rational, then define Q as follows. Q is going to be defined as P minus P square minus 2 upon P plus 2. This is a very specific construction, but yeah, you'll see why it works the way it does. So given a rational P, I define Q as follows. It's P minus the ratio of P square minus 2 upon P plus 2. Alright, which with one level of simplification can easily be shown to be 2P plus 2 upon P plus 2. Okay, now why has Q been defined in this manner? The first thing to note here is that if P belongs to A, okay, what does it mean to say that P belongs to A? If P belongs to A, that means that P square minus 2 is negative. If P square minus 2 is negative, then you are defining Q such that it's P minus something that is negative, right? So therefore in this case you should be able to convince yourself that Q will in fact be more than P. So if you pick any rational whose square is less than 2, then by this definition Q will actually be more than that rational P. If P belongs to B, namely that P is a rational whose square is more than 2, which means P square minus 2 would be positive. That means that Q would actually be P minus something positive, so which means Q is going to be less than P. Right? So these are elementary consequences of the definition of the rational number Q in the first place. Okay. Now let us compute what happens to Q square minus 2. Right? Q square minus 2 by definition is simply 2P plus 2 upon P plus 2 the whole square minus 2. Okay. Now one step of simplification, which you are all capable of doing much better than me, would result in this 2 times P square minus 2 upon P plus 2 the whole square. Right? So I would ask that each of you basically does this calculation yourself and convinces yourself of this. Okay, what does this calculation tell me? What this calculation tells me is that if P belongs to A, okay, then what does it mean? If P belongs to A, that means that P square minus 2 is actually negative, correct? But if P square minus 2 is negative, you can see that Q square minus 2 is also negative, because Q square minus 2 is basically just twice P square minus 2 upon P plus 2 the whole square. So the sign of P square minus 2 is the same as the sign of Q square minus 2. Okay? So if P belongs to A, namely if P square is less than 2, that implies that Q square is also less than 2. Okay? So if P belongs to A, then on one hand I know that Q is greater than P, and Q also belongs to A. This is the part of the implication that you need to understand. So if I pick any rational P that belongs to A, namely that P square is less than 2, then by this construction the rational number q is also such that q square is less than 2, so q also belongs to A, but q is in fact more than P, right? Which is to say that A does not have a largest element. Why? Because if I pick any element P that belongs to A, I can find another element Q that belongs to A that is even larger, right? So therefore A does not have a largest element. Right? And the same construction in fact shows the other as well. So if P belongs to P, which means that P square is more than 2, then by the same construction you can conclude on one hand that Q is less than P, and Q square minus 2 is also positive, because Q square minus 2 is twice P square minus 2 by P plus 2 the whole square, which means Q belongs to B. So in words, what this means is that if you find me any number, any rational number in B, I can find another rational number in B which is smaller, which means therefore that B has no smallest element. Right, and that really completes this proof. Okay, so it's important to now go back and like ruminate on what these two results together imply. The first tells you that there is no solution to the equation x square is equal to 2 among the rationals, right? Then we decided that I'm going to partition the non-negative rationals at least into two, disjoint but exhaustive sets, A and B. A is the set of non-negative rationals whose square is less than 2. B is the set of non-negative rationals whose square is more than 2. Right? And what we have shown through this fairly simple construction, there are other constructions that are possible that would illustrate the same thing, is that A has no largest element and B has no smallest element. Okay? So which means if I find any rational whose square is less than 2, I can find another rational which is even larger whose square is less than 2. If I find any rational whose square is more than 2, I can find another rational that is smaller whose square is also more than 2. Okay? So also, if you think about it, points to the existence of certain gaps. The existence of no such largest element or no such smallest element suggests again some gaps within the rationals. Okay, so that is the example that I wanted to illustrate. To further define the existence of this gap more precisely, I need to define the notion of an ordered set, which is what I will do in the next video. Alright. So yeah, once you have internalized this example, go on to the next video. Thanks.